Hi, I'm Eleanor Meyerhofer, a native Californian designer and digital strategist. In October of 1999, a few years after graduating from design school, I flew from San Francisco to Munich with a fistful of Deutschmarks, a dial-up connection, and an extremely vague plan. 20 plus years later, after a 10-year stint at a global agency, freelancing, and launching 2 online businesses, I'm still here. Now I'm talking to other expat business owners to share knowledge, stories, and inspiration for other non-Germans running businesses in Germany. I am here with Cheryl Howard of the Berlin Life, which you may have heard of. And I am going to kick it off by asking you the question, Cheryl, that I ask everybody, which is, what is a 2-minute story of how you ended up in Germany? And where are you from?
Okay, so hi, thanks for having me on. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and I first came to Berlin in 2011 on one of those working holiday visas. And I came without really much of a plan. I was on career sabbatical. I wanted to do something different. So I decided I would move to Europe, and Germany seemed to be the most attractive location because it had job prospects and other things like that. And being in Central Europe and really conducive for traveling, I was pretty excited about that. So yeah, I came in May of 2011. And for the first 6 months, I was just continuing my career sabbatical, got used to living to life in Berlin, meeting people, traveling a lot. So I was in Italy, I was in Spain, I was all around. And then, yeah, after about 6 months, money started to run out, and I knew I needed to find a job or come back home to Canada. And yeah, I ended up becoming a freelancer. So I did a mix of IT project management, which was what I did as a day job before. And I was also doing some travel blogging and writing for a local hotel. So it was a good mix. And then, yeah, things got complicated. So I ended up moving back home to Canada after 18 months.
Oh, wow.
And I stayed there for 2 years. But the whole time I was there, I was plotting my way back. So I was learning German, I was seeking job coaching. And I just moved back when I found a job, and
Mhm.
I didn't like the freelancing life and like
Okay.
unpredictable income and late invoices and all this stuff and
Yeah.
all the hustling that you have to do. So yeah, I came back with a full-time job, and since then I worked as a scrum master and agile coach, and in more recent years I work as like a team coach, and then on the side I run the Berlin Life. And yeah, I kind of call myself like a co-founder of Berlin Life. With it, the mission is to help people move to Germany and find work, and more specifically Berlin if they want. And yeah, so I also offer some career coaching services through there. So yeah, that's why I'm here. And now this year I'll celebrate 10-year anniversary of being
Wow.
in.
Wow. So let's launch into that. The Berlin Life. Why don't you tell the folks at home what it is and how you got the idea for it?
Yeah, sure. Um, so so yeah, I guess like when I had first moved here, I was writing not only about travel but also what it was like to live in Berlin, and I was just sharing my personal experiences more than anything. So I was writing about like how you make friends in a new
Yeah.
country and what was working for me, how to find a job, and that's the one that really changed everything. Because back then, by no means was I an expert at finding a job. I just
Mhm.
shared the things that worked for me, especially as I moved back.
Mhm.
And it became really popular. And yeah, it was like, I think for a while it was the most popular page on my travel blog, and or it was like a travel and kind of like, I don't like the word anymore, but expat living.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So yeah, and like finally I think like during the pandemic our company wasn't doing well because they were a travel company. So the revenues quickly plummeted. And so we were all on Kurzarbeit. So like that short term
I
work
love
program.
Kurzarbeit.
Yeah.
Kurzarbeit in 2001.
Yeah. And well, I mean, it's a bit stressful to get less money, but then suddenly you have a lot of time on your
Yeah.
hands. So my workload was reduced to 50%. So I had all this time. And by this time, I'd also gained experience as like a hiring manager. So helping to hire people, interviewing lots of people, building up different tech teams. And in my first few years in Berlin, I was also on the other side of it. I kept working for startups that were either going out of business or like reorganizing and laying people off.
Oh.
So I had to find a job a lot. And so
Ah,
I kind of took all the content that I had and I moved it to the Berlin Life. I moved it off of my travel blog. So I started just writing guides like, okay, here's how to find a job. Here's how to do a cover letter. Here's how to do a CV that's kind of like relevant for the German market and also showcases, people's, I don't know, the best version of themselves. Like a lot of
uh,
people mistakes, like, they just list out their duties for their job, which is really boring, but, like, say, for example, if you're whatever you are, a product manager or a marketing manager, the tasks tend to be the same, and especially if you've done it for a long period of time, so you need to focus more on other things that you did, like projects that you led or, like, results that you have. So I help people kind of explore those things, um,
okay.
kind of teach them how to make it relevant to their job and those types of things. So it ends up showing a much more impactful version of themselves that
Okay.
really reflects who they are. And yeah, so it's a combination of those guides, career coaching services, as well as like a community. So we host like monthly events. So sometimes we have like, for lack of better name, I don't know what else to call it, but like a ladies networking dinner where
Okay.
you just meet other professional women in Berlin and have a nice dinner chatting. Or we have one at the end of the month in a beer garden, which is for everyone. And again, it's the same just for people to come out and connect with others, especially if they're new and lonely here. Yeah. So I think that's about it. It's a lot of things, but it's
Okay.
cool.
All right. I have some, like a bunch of follow up questions, but the first one is so when you started posting, was this just like a blog? And then did it become a newsletter? Like, can you tell me how that started?
Sure. Yeah. So in the beginning, it was more like a blog with just career guides.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, right around the same time that I formally launched the site, I also started a newsletter. And yeah, it's kind of morphed and changed a lot over the years. But I was always trying to share, like, hey, here's some companies that are hiring right now. Here's, like, I don't know, startup news, who got funding
Mhm.
recently, could be good
Mhm.
places to look for jobs, and advertising the events and,
Mhm.
sometimes sharing brands, like how I don't know how it's kind of like a practice in Germany to add photos to your CV.
All right.
And there's like a whole thing around that. So sometimes I would give out advice like, don't feel pressured to put your photo on your CV if you don't want to. So just things like that.
Okay. And did you find okay, so sorry, what year was it when you started this?
It was kind of unofficially started in 2020, but officially in 2021. So like
Okay.
it was happening on my old website, but then I finally shifted everything over to the berlinlife.com in 2021.
Okay. Ah, and you used a .com, not a
Yeah.
.de. It was that deliberate or you just picked com?
I don't know. I like .com
Okay, okay,
already, so I just picked .com, yeah.
okay. And did it just grow organically or did you try and, like, optimize it for SEO? I mean, how did you how did it grow and did you do any intentional things?
I guess mostly it's from, like, organic SEO,
Mhm.
so I'm it took a little while, but, like, maybe after a few months, like, a lot of the posts that I was writing started to get more traction and more
Mhm.
traffic. So that was just through writing search engine
Yeah.
optimized posts,
Mhm.
and
So you
yeah,
did just optimize the posts. You didn't
yeah,
just, like, pull up to your desk and start banging out whatever.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
And yeah, but I never did like any SEM, like any search
Oh,
engine
okay.
monetization. So I've never done like Google ads
Yeah.
or Facebook ads or anything like that. And then the rest, I guess, has just been through like mostly like word of mouth and also sharing things on social media. So like on Twitter or I think before I think just mostly on Twitter and Facebook. And at the moment, I'm trying to focus on growing other social properties because I know Google search is a little bit, or at least Google organic search is on its way out. So I want to be ready for that.
Yeah, interesting times, interesting times.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that, and this is totally only interesting maybe to me, but can I just ask what platform the site was on and what your newsletter is on?
Yeah, so my website is on WordPress,
Okay.
and then I also use an add-on to WordPress, Divi,
Yeah,
which
web
helps
builder.
it makes building the site a little bit easier and maybe a little bit nicer. Well, I don't know if building the site is easier. Divi is a bit complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it it gets easier with time. And originally, it was on ConvertKit for the email
Mhm.
newsletter. ConvertKit, they have a lot of great features, but they're really expensive. Like after you
Yeah.
get over 1,000 subscribers, and then it goes up again if you go over 3,000 subscribers. So I switched to Substack,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of just testing it out for a while. But the number one reason I switched over is because it saves me 50 euros a month.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's maybe some disadvantages with them, but they don't have feature parity with ConvertKit, but
Mhm.
it's, like, good enough, and the ConvertKit features that I still need, I can use under their free plan, so
Okay. Okay. Thanks for indulging
yeah, no
that
problem.
question. So, well, last question, and you said, do you have also, like, a online membership, or is it like an in-person did you mean the membership is more the meetups kind of?
Yeah, it's not a membership per se, but just a community. So
Okay.
we have different informal ways of doing that. I have a Facebook group with a lot of people in it, but Facebook is really terrible with reach. Like there's
Yeah.
8,000 people in the group, and you can post something and 30 people will see it.
Oh, really? In the groups even?
Yeah.
Ah.
And you can't pay to amplify in the group either. You can kind of do these annoying at everyone comments. I do it
Yeah.
like once a week. If you abuse it, then people will just leave. Um,
Yeah.
so I do it once a week when just as a way to kind of amplify the reach of the newsletter to get like other people reading it.
Okay.
But yeah, the participation is in it is really low. Probably at some point I may look into like getting a volunteer who can help with like community engagement to see if we
Mhm.
can put some life to it. And we also have a small Slack group
Oh,
and
right. I'm in that group.
yeah, and participation there is always varied. It's really hard and it's probably like the lowest on my list of items to
Mm.
look at because I'm usually like working on writing the newsletter, developing or updating content. But yeah, that's something that I'd like to look into more. And then of course we have like the in-person events which are really nice. So far all of them have been pretty good. We keep them small, casual. It's not a big party, it's not big sponsored meetups.
Yeah.
It's just like really chill chances just to connect with other people, hopefully other people who are either working or looking themselves. So it's a nice way for people to meet one another and, just to establish that some connections in Berlin. So
Yeah. You is this your main job, or is it a side hustle?
it's a side hustle.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yes,
That's
it
a
is.
lot
I
as a
basically
side hustle.
have no life. I need to find some ways to become a little bit more efficient with my time. But I mean, like my full-time employer is pretty good. You just have to let them know that you have a side business and there's numerous people who have them. Like,
Mhm.
we have another colleague who has like I think he prints T-shirts or something, and another colleague who also does coaching. So they're pretty good as long as you let them know and you have to sign some sort of agreement to say it's not like interfering with your work. So yeah, I guess that's one nice perk about living in Germany. If you do everything officially and you declare your taxes and you get it okay from your employer, it's great that they're so open to that and not like conscriptive about it or something.
Yeah. And okay, so let's go back to the people reading your newsletter, and obviously the people in your community are already there in Berlin. But do you like what percentage of your readers are within Germany and what percent are without?
I'm actually not sure. That's probably something I should look into. I think it's a mixture because it's not just for helping people move here, it's also for helping people find work. So a lot of
Mhm.
people who are subscribed to the newsletter might be already here.
Mhm.
They're looking for a job. So I would say it's a pretty good mix. But yeah, I should probably look into that more and maybe segment the newsletter a bit
But can you get those stats? Because I can no longer see where people are in my I mean, I do not use the sophisticated email tool, I just use the Squarespace one, but
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that's like a data privacy thing now, you can't see where people are.
I have I have, like, the back end of Substack offers, like they have, like, some stat, but I would have to look into it more, but they do have something on the back end that
Okay.
kinda gives you, like, a general distribution of where people are at. Yeah, it's not coming up yet, but, yeah, I think yeah, it would be a good question to ask readers too, because
Yeah.
perhaps you could segment them a bit or something.
Sometimes they'll tell you. I know, like, if I've never used ConvertKit, it was, like, way too much firepower for me, but I know you can have people can click stuff, and then that just generates a tag, and then you can segment. Anyway, so, I mean, it's a side hustle, but, I mean, I'm guessing it's a lot of work, and I'm sure you're not entirely doing it out of the goodness of your heart, meaning, like, are there ways you are, like, getting some revenue or, like, monetizing it at all, and what are they?
Yeah, it's always part of it I do out of the goodness
Well,
of my
yes,
heart
yes.
because I like
Obviously,
helping
the labor of
people,
love.
and I like kind of keeping, like, this there's a lot of people who try to, like, gatekeep information or they try selling bad information, even worse when it's bad information.
Mm,
So it's always a fine line deciding where to monetize or not. So at the moment, at least the guides are free
mhm,
and they are pretty detailed and I do work hard on them. And then anybody who wants help with their job application or practicing for interviews, which is more on the services side that I offer, I do charge for those.
mhm.
I even recently put up the prices a little bit because I just realized how much work I was putting
Yeah,
in. Might make people hesitate a little bit, but it's the only way to keep things sustainable,
yeah,
especially because on top of that, you have, like, your monthly operating expenses, like web
yeah,
hosting and other things that come up, and then, of course, recording everything and submitting the taxes, so at the moment, it's a little bit hard, and I'm definitely not becoming rich. I That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. I'm hoping to try to find some more ways to make it, like to work more efficiently, to maybe have, like, a passive income. So
Mhm,
I do get a little bit of income from there, and I'm just starting to get into it more, but also, like, affiliate marketing.
mhm.
And yeah, I gotta spend more time on it. I've been doing it over the past couple of weeks, but like, Amazon links,
Mhm.
links with some of the housing providers and things like that. Just partnered with one of the local coding schools as well.
Okay.
But I mean, all of those things take time.
Take time, yeah.
Uh,
I'm gonna try and record one episode where I don't complain about tax preparation, but I just did, like, a spreadsheet. Like, I get a thing from my tax advisor, like the BVA and everything, and I know all of that, but I made my own spreadsheet and just taxes, expenses, everything, and, like, what you have to make to just kinda break even. It's a lot, and Berlin is not cheap anymore, and Munich certainly isn't cheap, but it's like you don't need money mindset coaching, you just need a spreadsheet to go, "Oh." I mean, sure,
yeah,
no
yeah,
shade on money mindset or whatever, but it's also when you just see the numbers, it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna just make myself a mini job if I don't, like, up my prices." But
yeah,
it's a balance. It's
yeah. I mean the because like I'm single and I don't have kids at the moment, like I have to support myself. I
Mhm,
mean, if I and I'm also and I even though working in tech, I
mhm,
also worry a bit about the job market. So one of my thoughts is if I could maybe reduce my working hours a bit at some
mhm.
point, maybe, work half a day less a week or one day less a week, but it comes at such a significant cut
Mm,
to your base pay. But if I ever get a point where I feel that business is good enough that I can compensate for that, I might try to reduce my regular working hours to have more time for the side hustle. But
yeah,
like I said, it's because I'm supporting myself. I have to keep it to make sure that the money is coming in.
yeah.
And yeah,
But
but that's really a thought for the future.
yeah, and it's good to have that. I left my corporate agency job well, like 14 years ago now, but I had it as a side hustle for like 2 years. It was a totally different digital era. It was like also 2006, 2000 when everything was like paid sponsorships on blogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, like, you have to look at your profit, not just your revenue. Anyways, it was
Yeah.
an experience, but it was good to, like, have that. I would have been very stressed out if I, like, just quit my job and, like, tried to make it work. It would have been
Yeah.
incredibly
Yeah.
stressful. And then I
And
did
kudos
Gründersuches.
yeah, and kudos to those who can do it. That's why I still have to keep exploring some strategies to see if I can make it happen even if somewhat. So it's one of my lofty goals. I'm not sure if I'll ever reach, but I'm definitely gonna try.
Okay. Before I have a bunch of questions here, but I wanna just go back. I don't know how much I really touched on this, but so you did optimize some posts. I'm assuming you've seen, like, growth. I don't know where I discovered you. I think maybe LinkedIn?
Okay.
Um, but, like, how would you do you know what have been the biggest things that have kind of grown your subscribers and audience?
I would say it's probably mostly the posts and people finding me through Google, like people who still like reading and
Mhm, yeah.
want to watch a video of me dancing around on TikTok,
Uh-huh.
which those seem to be quite popular. So yeah, I would say that's like my number one way that people become aware of the website, and then through kind of like the light social media presence. But my social media presence was intentionally light because I decided to put all my focus into building the content and not so
Mhm,
much on socials.
mhm,
But I heard, I mean, I'm not sure, but I heard that Google is going to bring AI results to the top, pushing organic
mhm,
searches even lower. So
mhm,
unless they're scraping my site to get that content, I mean, they could still scrape my site to get that content and it won't bring people over to the website. People will just read the answer and be like, okay. And I also read that more people now are doing more and more searches with Instagram and TikTok. So I'm reluctantly going to get over there and maybe do some videos and try to come at it with a different perspective than you might see
mhm.
from some of the other videos that circulate, uh,
Yeah.
like the topic of moving to Germany and working in Germany.
I've been, like, following people, this whole search and media and distribution and all this, like, I don't know if you heard, you listen to The Verge?
Sometimes, yeah.
Norton, he interviewed the CEO of Google about all of this, and
Okay.
it was actually, did you listen to that? And
No,
he
but I will.
really, it was, I mean, it was friendly, but it was hard hitting about AI overview because he said, "What are you gonna do to all these small publishers? It feels like a take." And Sundar, I forget his last name, but he was like, "No, no, this is just human curiosity is boundless and people are gonna search." But my take, I'm in all these groups, like, what does everybody think? And I think nobody really knows. And then there's the debate. I don't know how it's working on WordPress, but at least on Squarespace sites, you can turn AI scrapers off, allegedly. Who knows how much of
Okay, okay.
then people say, "No, don't turn it off because you won't show up at all." But I'm like, I'm turning mine off for now.
Yeah.
And my prediction, I guess, is I think, no idea, but I feel like content that will be more, I don't know, clickable, even if it's not surfaced right away, is not like how-to content, but first person stories and experiences. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, and then people are saying, "No, it's just gonna be different at search." But it is interesting. And then I've heard that TikTok for discovery and YouTube is,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
YouTube as well. Yeah.
YouTube, I mean, I just syndicate this podcast onto YouTube because I was like, "Okay, I can just press
Oh,
a
neat.
button, at least that's doing something." But yeah, it's all very interesting. And
Yeah.
I mean, I like to ask this question to a lot of people. What's also, okay, let's put AI aside, but search engine optimization, I think, is trickier when you are operating in another language than the region you're in. Like, I know how to get stuff to rank somewhat. I'm not an SEO expert, but, like, if you type in "website in a day," I come up. But half of that traffic is from the US, and then they see that I'm in Germany. It's not interesting. So, did you do any, like, research around terms, or you just
No, I just write and then I just target a certain keyword. I mean, I used to have access through a friend to like, I don't know how you pronounce it, like HREF.
Oh, Ahrefs or yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah.
I'm not sure how to
Yeah.
pronounce it. I had access to that for a while and then like he killed the access.
Mhm.
So sometimes I just use Google predictive search to see
Mhm.
terms that are coming up. Or even if you use like going back to AI for a brief
Mhm.
second, if you use Perplexity AI,
Mhm.
you like type in a certain thing, then it shows you a bunch of related questions or
Hmm.
things as well. So sometimes I use that as a hint about like how to like direct
Okay.
the search terms. But yeah, like most of my posts actually rank pretty well, but I've been trying to tackle some bigger things recently and so far it's not working. So I have to
Yeah.
see how it goes.
Maybe we'll both be on TikTok in a few months.
Yeah, not dancing.
No, but I've heard I've just I don't have the time or and it's also not really my audience, but LinkedIn is, like, where I do most of my, like, real-time social, not just dialed in. Would you wanna say something?
Yeah, actually, LinkedIn is an interesting one, and I never really thought much about it before, even though my site is mostly about like finding work and tips
Mhm.
about looking for work in Germany, especially as a foreigner. But LinkedIn, like my LinkedIn page, I even deleted it at one point because I was like, oh, it's not worth it. But not sure what prompted me, but I finally decided to restart it.
Mhm.
And in the past few months, it's really been growing. I mean, for me, I mean, it's a relative or subjective
Yeah.
number, but for me, it's been growing. So I think within a few months, I'm now at like 700 and some odd followers, which is not
Mhm.
that many at all, but like a lot more than I expected. So I'm kind of just going to keep experimenting with LinkedIn and see if that helps as well.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I think especially for my topic, it can be interesting to see where that goes as well.
Yeah, I like it because it's about business and everybody knows it. And if you're it's like, I have a client-based business, so I'm not trying to amass a huge audience. So it work and I just post as myself. I didn't even bother with a business thing. So it's actually been pretty good. It's at least 30% of my
Oh, nice.
inbound leads. But again, I don't need like 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I covered that. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about the current job market in Germany. I mean, I've been self-employed for a long time now, so I'm not really paying attention, but I hear noises like things are
Yeah.
bad. What's your take?
It's really weird actually. Like that's the only word that comes to mind when I think about it because for sure, like if you look at like year on year, unemployment hasn't really gone up as much as you would expect. But it also feels like, at least within tech, with all my friends and different people that I know, and through people in the community of the Berlin life, we just keep hearing about people losing their jobs, and then that the market is tight, and where I have a friend of mine who works as a product manager and he got laid off last year and he hasn't been looking that hard. But he said he was so used to leads just coming into him and he was getting contacted on LinkedIn all the time,
Mhm,
even when he was employed. But now that he's a little bit more intentionally seeking out new work, he's been finding it really, really hard, especially being someone who he's a bit more senior. He's been
mhm,
head of product before. So either he feels like he's going to have to step down into, not being a lead of a team, but
mhm,
just doing product work. So yeah, there's a lot of people who are feeling the challenge right now, but you can still see tons of, I think there's more than 700,000 jobs on the market. I just looked yesterday. Yeah, there was 700,000 free jobs on the market, but
Tech jobs?
just all jobs in
All
Germany.
jobs, yeah.
And I think, like, obviously, like, the population is aging and they're
Right.
aging at a much faster rate than what they were expecting. I just read that recently.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
But I think it's at this weird time where it's gonna really take a while for things to change because a lot of the jobs still demand fluent German, and a lot of people a lot of people either they just don't want to learn the language or it takes them time. And I think a lot of employers, they know that they need people, but they're still always looking for people who have flawless German. And even some people have been saying, yeah, like I have like B1 or C1, and I'm still having a hard time because, they want somebody who's, easier for to communicate with. So I think it's gonna be weird for a while, but I can see a trend in the future where they're just gonna take anyone. Like,
Mhm.
they even lowered the requirement for the amount of German to be a nurse. Like, I think it's only B1 now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which, I mean, B1 is really good, like, kudos to anybody who's gotten it, but I feel like that might not be enough to be able to, like, communicate with patients or
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually my next question, like, how many people that you come into contact with have good German, and how much of that is a real part of the, like, job requirement?
Yeah. So I haven't really been able to find good stats or like their old stats, but I still think it's like 90% or more of the jobs available on the market require at least some level of German.
Mhm.
And so yeah, Germany really needs people, but they also need people who speak German, at least for
Yeah.
the moment. So my advice is always to tell people to learn German, but I would
Mhm.
say only there's more people who don't know German than who know
Mhm.
German, but that's just in my very, very anecdotal
Mhm.
experience of the people I'm talking with, and mostly probably because I'm talking to foreigners.
Yeah.
That maybe that kind of skews it. So I don't want to make some big statement, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the people at least that I'm working with tend to be in the midst of learning German. And I just tell them, like, especially some people want to come to Germany but have really specialized jobs. So their job search is probably going to take them a lot longer than if they're a software engineer or something else. So
Mhm.
I always encourage them, like, okay, like stay positive, keep working, keep applying for jobs. But in the meantime, I'm like, just learn German as much as you can. And that will only increase your pool of opportunities.
Yeah, it's tough. I remember when I started working at the agency that I worked at for 10 years. It was 2000, I think, and it was a US agency that was starting they had a London office, but they were starting their continental Europe,
Okay.
operations. They were based in Boston, so the recruiter was from Boston, and I, like, stumbled in there, and I had been working at startups in San Francisco, and he was and, I showed my portfolio, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, we think you're a good fit, blah, blah, blah," and then he said, "Oh, how's your German?" And I was like, not so great." And he goes, "Ah, it doesn't matter." And, you know, it didn't at that time, and the first project I worked on, it was Yellowstone in Cologne, so and there were, like I was just a lowly graphic designer, web designer at that time, and so it didn't really matter because we were just being told what to do. But then as I progressed, it is Europe, so I was always on international clients that spoke English. So it would at one point, I was I don't know if I could pass it now, but I was C1.
Oh, nice.
But I don't know if I would pass that test again. But it was hard. They paid for me to learn German, and I would go after work every day, and German is a tough language. And I think the other challenge, if you are an English speaker, is you can get away with speaking English forever. And I remember ironically, I was on a project in London, and I made a deliberate effort, and I was working with a friend still a good old friend of mine who's German, to just speak German. And she was really patient because it's hard to speak your language with somebody who's a learner. And we
Yeah.
spoke German on that whole trip, and but it took a lot of effort to really say, "I'm going to," and at that time, it was pretty good. Now it's, like, bad again because I have a kid, and she is in bilingual kindergarten, and my husband and I speak English, and it's a lot worse. But I don't have a good I'm just rambling here, but I don't have a good answer for how you really I feel like you have to go to a little village where nobody speaks English but also doesn't speak some weird dialect of German that you can't understand.
Yeah, that's also true. Like, for sure, in Berlin, you can get away with speaking only English, but then again, it also depends. Like, I think people should be allowed to make their own choices, but then you have to live with the pain of not knowing German. So even recently, I just went into a salon to get like a facial or something, and this was in central Berlin, and the attendant didn't speak English, which was totally fine.
Mhm,
Um, so, like, you still do find a lot of instances of where people don't speak English. Like, obviously, you always figure things out. And of course, if you go to any government office, they're not allowed to speak to you
mhm.
uh, in English
Oh, they're
usually.
not allowed?
Yeah, I think so. At least with the foreigners office or the unemployment office, sometimes informally they will, but I think by law they have to speak English, or sorry, they have to speak German with you to make sure that they've given you like the correct instructions on things
Ah, okay.
be like misinterpreted. But yeah, it's a bit weird. I think like I hope that in the coming years the government will work harder to make like some of the bureaucracy easier and make, I don't know, like a visa application available in different languages, like not just English, but like I think that would improve accessibility to things a lot more. Cause like being from Canada, like I remember just last year I went home for vacation and like you land in the airport and it's saying hello and welcome and there's all these signs in all these different languages
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, this is really cool. And I was like, this is what I would love Germany to be. Yeah, because I think for people who don't know German, especially if you've just moved here, it if you've just moved here, you're starting a new job, like learning German might not be your first priority in your
Mhm.
months of settling in. So if there was some ways to like minimize that pain a little bit, like having services available in different languages, I think could really, really help. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. It's, uh, it's interesting.
yeah, yeah. So that's why I feel like the market is just really weird right now. Like they need people, but they can't always find candidates who tick all the boxes. Like maybe they find a really good candidate, but they can't speak German. And if that person can't come into the office and communicate with everybody, or you have to get a whole office or a whole team to change their language to speak with one person, you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's hard, like, no judgment on anybody, but yeah, I hope it will change more, or it has to change, I guess, because everybody's getting old and we need to keep the pension system going, so,
yeah, yeah. I mean, things have changed even so much now with translation tools. So I now when I get some paper, I'm like, "Oh, no, how am I gonna answer this question?" I have to, like or just hand it to my husband is what I do, which is bad. Well, if it's, like, some complicated insurance thing. But, yeah, something's gonna it's gonna I mean, we're just gonna have to meet halfway. People are gonna have to step up their German, and Germany's gonna have to be more flexible because it is I was in a networking group a month ago, and it was really interesting because one of the women works at, like, an agency, and one of the other women was, like, a recruiter, and the woman at the agency said, "If you've got, like, innovation in your title, you need to start looking for a new job. It's, like, growth, everything's, like, pushing stuff," and then the woman who's a recruiter was like, "We do not have enough people," and I'm none of this fluffy tech internet job, like, "We need plumbers and nurses, like, there are not enough people, bus drivers," like
teachers is a
What?
big teachers is a
Oh,
big
yeah, yeah, don't get me started on well, we're lucky we have a great teacher and everything, but, like, can we ran our child's do you know what an Eltern initiative is?
a little bit, yeah.
It's like, you kind of the government subsidize it, but you kinda start run your own kindergarten, but you can hire teachers, you can run it any way you want,
Oh, okay.
but you end up, like, a lot of them are young women, not all, but sometimes they get pregnant, things happen, like, you just don't wanna lose a teacher because finding another one is impossible. I'll try and, like, table that, like, my tax and
Yeah,
teacher rants, but,
yeah.
yeah, and our kid, when she started elementary school this year, they let us know, like, a week before, like, "Oh, we're only gonna have after school care every other week because we don't have enough people."
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah,
Okay.
that was a big deal here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, yeah, they need people.
Yeah.
So on that note, what would you say to people that are considering coming to Berlin? What do they need to understand?
Yeah. That's a great question because there's a lot of things. I think that when people want to move to Germany, like if they're already here, it's a little bit easier, but if they're thinking about moving to Germany, they should really spend some time just doing research, like like going to LinkedIn or whatever job search site you want to use, Indeed, and do searches of jobs that you're looking for, try to find out how many jobs are available, like in each city, so see how many opportunities are available in Berlin versus Hamburg versus somewhere else, and start looking at the job descriptions to see what the requirements are, because sometimes they do differ by country, and really start to look for common themes. And, if they find things that match right away, I would say just to start applying.
Mhm,
A lot of companies will go out of their way to hire people from abroad. And again, it always depends on the situation and how desperate the company is. So I think applying from abroad can be quite fine as long as you are patient, you're willing to maybe wait a little bit longer. But yeah, I think the research is really, really key, and just trying to inform yourself if there's any differences between what you're doing now or not, and then doing the needed upskilling if that's needed. Because, depending on the profession, you might have to do additional education, or you may have to get your degree recognized.
mhm,
I know that the government is starting to relax on its like obsession with education and formal
yeah,
degrees, and now they're looking more at work experience. But I still think on the ground, a lot of HR people still want people with degrees or with recognized degrees,
mhm,
whatever that means in context of Germany.
yeah, yeah,
And so, yeah, I think research is really key. And then, yeah, like really, really spending time on creating a good job application that creates a good pressure, or sorry, not a good pressure, a good impression,
yeah,
because a lot of people just like they have one CV and they just send the same one out. They don't send cover letters, or they just send really generic ones. I don't think that that works anymore. I do think it's a bit unfortunate, but I try to encourage people to like really look for companies that they want to work for. So not just looking, okay, I want to be, I don't know, I want to be a plumber. Maybe you want to be a plumber for a certain kind of company, or, you want to be a project manager for like climate tech is really big right now and will
right,
continue to be that way for a long time. So like, if you really want something more purpose driven, or sorry, I can't talk today. If you want something more purpose driven, like applying for companies that like actually mean something to you, submitting a job application that's really thoughtful and customized to the employer so you can show your relevance right away, and that
mhm,
looks like you put time and effort into your job application. So that's where I think the quality over quantity is better, because sometimes I hear from people, "Oh, I've applied to 500 jobs and I didn't get a reply." And, then I already have lots of questions like, how are you doing your job applications? Are you customizing them? Are you just applying for any jobs? Are you applying for jobs that really like match, your
mhm,
profile? So, yeah, I think that's really critical. And the other one I said already, but it's really basic and straightforward. The more German you know, the
yeah,
better your chances will be. And like I said, maybe that can change in the future, but for right now, it's like it's almost a must.
mhm, mhm. And I hear a lot about, like, how the housing crunch in Berlin. Is that a factor?
Yes, that as well. I mean, of course, you can always book that can maybe kind of get you past the first year or so. A lot of people are booking these short-term accommodation
Mhm,
providers where you can get a lease for a few months or up to a year. And a lot of people do that, but they're overpriced, which
yeah,
contributes to more of the problems for local people who are already here. But yeah, I would say actually finding an apartment in Berlin, I'm not sure about the rest of Germany, is pretty much going to be the hardest thing that you have to go
okay,
through. Some people are really lucky and they find things right away, but I talk to other people who spend so much time looking, like, like especially if they see that you're still on probation and in your job and you just moved here,
All right.
It might be a little bit more difficult to get someone to take you on, or obviously, like, it's also unfortunate, but, like, being foreign is also against you, so especially if you're a person of color, you have certain types of last
Mhm.
names. We've seen articles in the news over and over again that, like, that makes it even tougher to find
Yeah.
something, rather unfortunately, so, yeah, you just have to keep trying. There's some it's a little bit interesting, I'll see where it goes, but there's kind of these people popping up that are offering services that they guarantee they can find you a flat within a certain amount of time.
Oh, wow.
Apparently have had some success, so I'm really, I mean, I'm not looking for a flat, but I'm interested to learn more about what they're doing or how they're succeeding.
Yeah, that's it's like a matchmaker. Um,
But
so
of course, those cost money, and that comes with a lot of privilege, right? Like, if
right.
people may be coming as students or something, it's not so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I can just attest that when I was kinda had, like, a bunch of thrown together living situations, and then when I got the job and had, like, my company help me, it was like night and day. It was like, "Oh, here's an apartment we have for you here, and here" it was totally different experience than just be like, "Here I am with my broken German."
Yeah, and I've heard from a few people that I've coached who've moved here in recent months that their employer is at least giving them a place to live for the few months, and then
Okay.
also, like, a lot of employers are working with relocation companies to assist people with
Right.
settling in, including finding an apartment. So, yeah, you're really lucky if you get something like that, because I think to try to navigate that process on your own when you haven't lived here before would be, like, really overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure. Alright, so I'm gonna wrap it up with, are there any things you would do differently if you were starting the Berlin life over again, or what advice you'd have to anybody who's starting something similar?
Maybe. I mean, I don't have any regrets because it's in the story and it's always changing, and usually it's getting better and new opportunities are popping up. But I think probably if I was to restart it again, I would try to have more of a plan. I'm kind of this At the moment, I just fly by the seat of my pants. I publish some articles and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I should try this. Maybe I should try this." I also think of a ton of ideas and then I never do anything about it. So, like, maybe just having a little bit more of a realistic plan, or I guess the other thing would be trying to find some more efficient ways to do things earlier. So, like, right now, a lot of what I do is, like, service-based, but so I have to do a lot of prep work before a coaching appointment, for example. Maybe I wanna get a little bit more into the passive income mode as well,
Mhm.
so I'm working now I've been working on it for 6 months, so this is what I mean, I also have to get on it, but to kinda, like, offer these mini courses where people can just learn how to do a cover letter or CV by themselves, but, like, step
Mhm.
by step,
Mhm.
and not just that recycled content that you see on Google, but actually, like, here's different things to think about, here's how to word things, things like that.
Well, you could have fooled me. Everything you put out looks super profesh, and so does your site. And also, I would argue that you did everything right because I think I run across a lot of people that are like, "I wanna do a course, I wanna do this," and it's like, "Okay, your first job is gonna be building an audience, because you can't just, like, throw that up and then people are gonna buy." And if I can say anything that's helped me the most is just remember 1%. That's gonna be your conversion rate. So if you want 4 people to buy something, 400 people gotta look at it. You gotta have 400 eyeballs on it, probably multiple times. So you've built this community and audience. So I think, yeah, that makes total sense to now think about those kinds of offerings, which sound great, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Cheryl. It was great meeting you and talking to you. And yeah, I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was really excited to be part, and yeah, I can't wait to hear it when it comes out.
Okay. Thanks for listening. You can find this episode and all other episodes of the Germany Expat Business Show at my website at www.eleanormeyerhofer.com/podcast. That's www.eleanormeyerhofer.com/podcast. mayarhofer.com/podcast. See you next time.